Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of the 5th of December for the day of 1381 for the Ukraine war or the special military operation in Ukraine by Russian defense forces. Anyway, we're going to jump straight into it over from the Kherson front. In the southern flank at the Kherson front, there is no shelling report as from the Russian side because the Russians do a weekly summary. So we do not have any reports from the Russians. The fighting reports is all from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, where they're still mentioning about the fighting over at the Antonovsky Bridge. So there's some poor arrows. So yeah. So that's it. But we do not know what's the situation here. So no, that's all we have. Over in the Zaporizhia front, over at the Kayamsky sector, we have fighting reported at Primorsky and Stepnohurst. So this remains to be the main thing. Over here, the Russians, this is the main push, the main offensive direction as usual. There's no change in the strategic situation. Over in the Orikhiv sector, we have already covered this before. The Ukrainians have taken positions at Malatomashka, negating the Russian advances. So that's all from this sector. Over in the Huaypole sector, we have fighting reported at Huaypole, Dobropilia, Slotke, Privilne, Krasnoyarsky, as well as Ribne. So this chunk here seems to be suggestions from the Ukrainian side that they actually still have positions here, and they probably are still continuing to reinforce the positions in this sector here. However, they also acknowledge that the Russians are attacking in this direction. So that's thing. Fighting at Huaypole is probably over from the Zatishite area here. So that's all. So we move on. There's nothing much to talk about here. We move on to the next front line, the Dnipro front. So over this sector, fighting is reported at Yehorevka, Sosnevka, and Olesendokhrad. So that's all. I think this is also pretty much the same situation as previously, where the Ukrainian presence is probably the reason why there is fighting in this sector. As you can see that the Ukrainian mapping, the blue mapping, does show exactly where the fighting could possibly be. So the Ukrainians continue to be in the area, or they have continued to have incursions in this area that is causing the fighting to be reported in these three different places. Over in the northern flank and the western flank of the Pokrov front, we have fighting reported in Yalta, Dashne, Kotlyarivka, Molodetsky, Novosahievka, Udashne, and Kotline. Generally speaking, these are generally static lines. I don't expect too much from this sector. This continued to be the Ukrainian claims of presence in this sector, despite the Russian forces has been geolocated way further away from these sectors. So yeah, it can be whatever you want to imagine it to be. So maybe teleportation devices, or maybe they dug through a hole, through a sandworm. We do not know. So it can be anything. The limit is your imagination. Over in the Pokrov front, so we're going to zoom in a bit. The Pokrov front, we have surprising developments. So other than the fighting at Pokrov, Minokrad, and Shavony Liman as usual, geolocation of Russian forces corroborates part of the Russian claims that they have closed the Minokrad salient. So this is now a Minokrad encirclement according to the Russians. This is allegedly what is remained in the of the Ukrainian positions in the Pokrov Minokrad region. However, the Ukrainians does not agree. They claim that they have a much bigger control of the region. The front line they think is around here. However, we have no evidence to show that's the case. And in fact, we have this geolocation to show that the Russians indeed has closed the gap. At least on our mapping, they have closed at least half of this entrance into the salient, which is probably an encirclement right now. So that's the current situation. So if you want to continue to believe Siversk, the commander of the Ukrainian armed forces, that they still have half of Pokrov, by all means. But in terms of DPS mapping, goes, our perspective is that Pokrov is pretty much a gone case situation. At most, the Ukrainians still have positions around here and around here, and that's it. This is all that is left of Pokrov, and even these two is like severe dubs that the Ukrainians are actually there. So everything else is all confirmed by geolocations. So it's really hard to support the Ukrainian claims. That they actually have half of Pokrov. So that's all from the Pokrov region. In the northern flank of the Pokrov front, we have fighting reported Shavony Liman, Rodinsky, Sukeske, Zatishok, Mayat, Volodymyrivka, and Rusinya. Generally speaking, these are the actions of the Russians trying to attack through the chain of settlements here. The grouping here is going towards the Propilia, generally speaking, with another one is flanking around the northern part of Pokrov, which so far they have been failing pretty hard, as the Ukrainians seem to have put up a pretty strong defense line here, where the Russians have not have any breakthrough. So the Rusinya is a static line, so I don't expect too much from that sector. So that's all from this northern flank of the Pokrov front. Moving into the Kostetinivka front, as mentioned, this is Rusinya. As I say, this is a static line. Russian forces attack Yablunivka, Shibinivka, Klebanbik, Prishievka, and Alexandro-Shutine. So this is, of course, all Ukrainian reports. The Russians generally is still doing the same thing. They are trying to fully secure Prishievka to go up north to create a southern wall. The Alexandro-Shutine one is probably it's just like they hope that it's here, but I think the front line is actually here. Yablunivka, if they actually do go, is to go towards Bereztok, but tentatively it doesn't look like it's anything. Fighting at Klebanbik is interesting. Shibinivka is definitely delusional. I don't believe this is a reality. But Ukrainians want to claim that they continue to have this stupid salient. They can continue to appear stupid. What is more interesting in this sector is the announcement. The Russian Defense Ministry announced the capture of Bezimiane. So this is a very interesting place. Bezimiane or Bezimianoe. The Russians previously announced the capture of Klinove. So now they mentioned the capture of Bezimiane. But I don't remember seeing them saying that they captured Varolubivka. Maybe they did, and I map it as somewhere else. That is a possibility. So, and the Russians already claim to have captured Maisky as well. So it's interesting, okay, so I circle around all the places that they claim they have captured. Novomakove, Maisky, Kalinove. So now they claim Bezimniane. So maybe they already have Varolubivka, maybe. So the front line could actually be now looking like this. Maybe, but don't know. So yeah, so if I zoom out a bit, Konstantinivka is over here. Konstantinivka is over here. So the front line may look like this, which is interesting. Because if this is the case, then we should be seeing fighting moving into Olestyevo-Druskivka. However, such an important development with no geolocations, no flag raising, very suspicious. Very suspicious, because this is a major operation, right? We are talking about a major flanking operation north of Konstantinivka towards Olestyevo-Druskivka. This would have been headline news. For those that actually wants to know the truth of the Ukraine war. So no, and probably there's only a few places that will report this as a headline. So yeah, so let's wait and see. Very, very bizarre. So fighting is reported at Novomakove as well, according to the Ukrainians. So that's all. We move into the Siversk front. At the Siversk front, we have fighting reported at Dronivka, Serebryanka, Siversk, Fedorivka, and Vasyukivka. So the Russians have secured the entire eastern outskirts of Siversk. So Siversk is now under severe threat, and the Russians have a strong foothold on the eastern part of Siversk. So the battle for Siversk continues. Serbianka is probably the war on the north of Siversk. Dronivka is probably the action moving towards Zakhine. Fedorivka, Vasilkivka is probably the pushing outwards operation, but no, not much details that we gotten. So it's very all is very like conjecture. It's not very confirmed. So Siversk, I just want to zoom in to show you the situation. The Russians already have this position, like they have entered severely in the eastern part of Siversk. Like all of this is now under Russian control, and that's like maybe a fifth of the city. So, and my feeling is that the Russians may actually have already captured like half of this city already. So let's wait for more information. Situation in the Siversk is pretty much unknown other than these developments, but let's see how this goes. Over in the Oscu front. In the Oscu front, we have fighting reported at Novovodiyane, Darilove, Koloziazi, as Zarishne. I think this one is talking about the salient near Merne. Darilove is fighting for Drobisheve as well as moving towards Sviatohursk. Novovodiyane is a static line. I don't expect too much from there. So that's all. This one is a very boring front line for now. Nothing serious actually happens here. Over in Borova front, fighting is reported at Novoyehorevka and Bohuslavka. The main action is this one. As the Russians want to take out this salient, this is probably static line. So that's all from the Borova front. Over in the Kupiansk front, no more reports about Kupiansk again. Like it just went dead again. Like no, it's a very weird battle. Fighting is reported at Pischane, Stepova, Novoselivka, and Khrushchevka. This means that the Ukrainians claim that the Russians are trying to take out the southern salient. So let's see, let's see how this goes. We also do not know. Over in the Voreshna front, we only have fighting reported at Odradne, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, but that's all. Over in the Kharkiv front, this is Kharkiv. In the Voschansk sector, we have fighting being reported. Let me zoom in. Over at Ibitske, Liman, Prilipka, Voschansk, and that's it. So generally, I think the Ukrainians are still claiming that the Russians are trying to take the city, despite the Russians have already claimed that the front line has moved very, very far away. The Russians are trying to take Liman. So battle for Liman and Prilipka, I think this is not disputed. And Ibitske will be the interesting one. That means the Russians have really fully secured Stalicia and they are pushing south. So that is something, it's reported by the Ukrainians. So definitely something is happening around there. So that's all from the Voschansk sector of the Kharkiv front. And the last front is the Sumy front. We have no reports around here because usually the reports on the Sumy front is by the Russians. So that's all. So this is the summary, a very short one for the day of 1381 for the 5th of December. So thank you for watching. Press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next update.